Okay, so today we're going to look at the perfect tense in French, le passé composé, and sometimes we call the perfect tense the past tense to make life simpler, because basically it's the tense most likely we will need when we're talking about things that happened in the past. However, strictly speaking, it's not the past tense. There's many past tenses in French. It's just that this one is the most common one we'll need. So if we have a look at example, I climbed the hill is going to be in this tense because it is something that happened once in the past, and that's the key thing with the perfect tense. If the action happened once, you're going to need this tense. So we might translate it in English using have. I have climbed the hill. That it was one single event that took place in the past. And very often it's the ed in the English on both those examples that gives it away that we're in the past. However, some of them, like I went to France, don't have the ed, but it's still one event in the past. Therefore, this is the tense we need. So if we take an infinitive out of the dictionary, for example, jouer, we can see that we've got an ER verb, and therefore the way we're going to deal with this is once we've got our infinitive, we take the ER off the end, so we've got the stem, just the same as we did with the present tense. And then we're going to put on the E acute, the E with the accent, to make it jouer. And however you're conjugating this, whoever is doing the verb, whoever played, it's still going to have this E accent on. It's always going to look like that. The thing that changes according to the person is what we call the auxiliary verb. Okay, and so there are two auxiliary verbs, avoir and être. And for most of them, we use avoir. We'll get to how to decide later on. But as you can see there, we've got two parts to this. I played is played, one word in English. But in French, you have to say j'ai joué. So you have to have the part of have and played. So it's essentially the same as if you were saying I have played. J'ai joué. I have played. You have played. Tu as joué. So in English we could say I have played, or we could say I played. But the important thing to remember is in French you must have the have. You can't leave it out, however you want to translate it. So there we go. It heightens the importance of knowing the irregular verb avoir in the present tense, because if you know that verb off by heart, j'ai, tu as, il a, elle a, nous avons, vous avez, ils ont, elles ont, then you can very easily make this tense, because you only need to remember that you need to put the E acute on the end, and you've got it. So if we have another look at a different one, manger, same thing. We've got our infinitive out of the dictionary, the bit that means to eat. We take off the ending and we put the E acute on. And then to make our different forms of the verb, we combine that with the different parts of avoir again. J'ai mangé, I ate. Tu as mangé, you ate. Il a mangé, he ate. Elle a mangé, she ate. Nous avons mangé, vous avez mangé. Ils ont mangé, elles ont mangé. The easy thing about this is this avoir is used for the vast majority of them. So if you've already learnt that, all you've got then is one word for each person, and it's as straightforward as that. Simple, no? Well, of course nothing's that simple in French. There are irregular verbs. There are ones that do not have the E accent on them. And here are a few examples. J'ai fait, j'ai pris, j'ai lu, j'ai vu, j'ai dit, j'ai bu, j'ai écrit. And I wonder if you could just pause the video and think about what they mean, what verbs, what infinitives do you think they come from? For example, you should be able to spot fairly easily that fait comes from the verb faire, to do. So j'ai fait means I did. So just pause it and see if you can work out the others. I wonder whether you got them. J'ai pris comes from prendre, to take, so j'ai pris means I took. J'ai lu comes from lire, so it's I read, j'ai lu. J'ai vu comes from voir, to see, so j'ai vu means I saw. Dit is from dire, to say, so j'ai dit is I said. Boire is the infinitive, to drink, and that forms j'ai bu, I drank, and then écrire, to write, turns into j'ai écrit, I wrote. Now sadly they're not the only ones, they're just some of the most common ones. However, the good thing is, when you learnt that irregular past participle, when you know that faire changes to fait, this bit, this j'ai, stays the same. It's still avoir if you want to change the person. So if you want to say we did, you just change the j'ai to nous avons, and nous avons fait would mean we did. Now we'll just have a quick look at how to work this out from the back of the higher tier learning mat. You can see here, if we look at past tense, brackets the perfect tense, and we look at our box for ER verbs, there you can see a copy of what I just showed you was jouer. J'ai joué, tu as joué, and the bit in bold is the bit that changes. So there's the verb avoir, and that's exactly the same as the verb avoir in the present tense. So you can see that down here, that irregular verb. If you just want to say I have, I have a sister, it's the same j'ai as we use for the perfect tense. And our irregular ones, lots of the irregular ones that we've got are down underneath this grid here. And so that's always a good place to start whenever you're putting a verb in the past, is to check that box there and to see whether it's on there, because if it is, you've got it. So there you can see j'ai vu, which I showed you earlier, I saw. So if you want to say he saw, you just check the he form of j'ai, and you can do that over here. Il a. So il a vu would be he saw. Right, that's fairly obvious. However, we also haven't talked about the IR and the RE verbs, which again are slightly different, and you can see that in bold there. Where we put an E accent on the ER verbs, the IR verbs end in I with the past participle. But at least it's the same for all the 6 persons. And the RE verbs, they all end in U. Okay, so although most verbs are ER verbs and they will end in E acute, you need to be aware that if they're not, it's going to be an I or a U. So if we just quickly see how that works in practice, if we pick another IR verb, like choisir, to choose, we do exactly the same thing. We take off the IR and we put on that I this time. Okay, and then we need to put that past participle with the right part of avoir. So if I wanted to say I chose, we just quickly go to the learning mat and check the I form of to have is j'ai. So we just put that with choisi and we get j'ai choisi. If we wanted to say they chose, we'd just go to the they form on the learning mat, and you see you've got ils ont, so they chose would be ils ont choisi. Simple as that. And it's the same process if it was an RE verb, except it would end in EU. Okay. Now then, if you remember from the start, I said that most of the verbs use avoir, like we can see here on the back of the learning mat, to make the perfect tense. However, I did say that there was a second auxiliary verb, and that was être. Now, that's the complicated thing about this perfect tense, what makes it a little bit difficult. Because some verbs use être, which is over here next to avoir. So instead of saying j'ai, you'd say je suis. The most common one is je suis allé, which you probably know is I went. And when you have a look at these irregular ones, you can see that there's a few irregular ones on here that do that as well. Je suis venu, I came. Je suis devenu, I became. And je suis né, I was born. And they strike us a little bit different. Unfortunately, there's not really an easy way to work out which ones start with je suis or a form of être. You've just got to learn them. And there is the list. Descendre, aller, monter, mettre, sortir, etc. They all begin their past perfect tense with être, and we say they take être as their auxiliary verb. Some people put them in that order so that if you read it down, it spells out damn smart perv. Well, almost. There needs to be another E on the end, but there isn't. So sometimes we call them the damn smart perv verbs, and there are other ways to form those letters, Mrs. Van der Tramp and things like that. But basically, you've got to learn those. There are also reflexive verbs which take être as well. So if there's a se or a ne or a te or some reflexive pronoun with the verb, those will conjugate with être, not avoir. So there's aller for you to see in all its glory. Je suis allé, tu es allé, il est allé, elle est allée, etc., etc. That's the tricky thing, is knowing when to use être. So you just have to learn, unfortunately, which verbs do and which verbs don't. And the other unfortunate thing is that there's a slight complication as well with verbs that take être, in that they agree with their subject. So if you are female and you are saying I went, you put an extra E on the end. Again, if you're talking about a girl who went and you say you went and she's female, you put an E on the end. So she went will always have the extra E. We went will always have an S. It may even have an E in there as well if we is all girls. Same with you. If it's plural, it will have an S. They will have an S. And they, if it's all girls, will have an ES. So you need to add those E's for feminine and S for plural if you use être as the auxiliary. Okay, so if we see how this works in practice then, and we take a verb like sortir, to go out. First thing we need to do is check on the back of the learning mat to see if it's on our irregular list, and it's not, unfortunately. Second thing we need to do then is look at this list here, because this is where our damn smart perv verbs are, all the ones that take être, and you can see straight away that sortir is there. Je suis sorti is on our list. So already we know the past participle is sorti. We don't have to worry about that. However, if we didn't know that, it would work exactly the same, because it's not on our irregular list. So we take the IR off and we put the I on. So we now know that it's a verb that takes être. I went out, je suis sorti. So we need to find the she form of je suis, and that's over here with all of the other être verbs. So straight away we can see she is elle est. So if we put that on, we get elle est sortie. She went out. However, because we've used être, we need to remember one more detail, and that's that it agrees. So because she is feminine, we put an extra E on the end, and then we're finished. Elle est sortie. She went out. It's not easy, but with lots of practice, you will get there in the end. So just keep persevering and going through the video again each time you're not sure.